made my decision, at the time I announced my decision, September 25th, 2009, I announced it that day because I have a very small family, and my cousin and his wife were here from Victoria, and I'm very close to my uncle, and I lived with my cousin when I was a boy when we immigrated to Canada, so that's why I chose that day. But I had made my decision after the last campaign, and the press didn't believe me, but it's true. So I've got no regrets personally, but when you look at the campaign, some of the stuff that's said is transparently ludicrous and would take 7 seconds to destroy. I mean, all this stuff, all these accounting issues at the City of Toronto. I mean, first of all, I think we're electing a mayor to be a leader, not the chief accountant. We have one of those. He's actually paid more than the mayor. And he actually happens to be very good. But not only that, if you looked at all the objective statistics, we've got the lowest property taxes in the GTA. Our credit rating is going up. I just announced today on Twitter that our surplus for this year is looking like it might even be as much as $200 million, certainly $150 million. I mean, compare that to Stephen Harper, for example. Stephen Harper is running the largest budget deficit in the history of Canada, and he just got it wrong by $2 billion. Well, oops, we're running a surplus. I mean, these are signs of a well-managed city, but at the same time, we've managed to invest in the priorities of people. And we've invested, as I said, in the priority neighborhoods. We've invested in people who have the least, like the street homeless. There are more than 2,000 people who have homes now, not are in shelters, are in homes, because of our program, Streets to Homes. And it's something I'm extremely proud of, because it was actually very hard to do. And as you recall, John, from your previous role at the Globe, the debate both in 2003 and 2006 was essentially about outlawing homelessness and arresting people. And we had the opposite approach. We were compassionate, and people now are housed. And we're building public transit, and we've invested billions in new buses and new subway cars and new streetcars that are all made in Canada, creating Canadian jobs. It's an incredible story of a positive city. And if you hear the narrative of the campaign, you almost never hear, other than Joe, hear anybody say anything good about Toronto. You'd think we were living in a Rust Belt American city that was struggling. We've got 100 cranes in Toronto. One of the leading U.S. real estate guys came up to meet with me recently, and he said, I think you've got more cranes in Toronto than in the entire United States of America. Right? And that's not an accident. We froze development charges. I got heavily criticized for this. People were saying, you're giving a gift to the developers. And I said, well, during the biggest global recession that's based in real estate, we want to make sure that these buildings that are on subway lines that we're trying to encourage through our official plan actually keep going. That's the story of a great place to live. And that's the story that people understand. And I think, so every time I hear this nonsense spouted about spending being out of control or the budget's not working or whatever either of them has said lately, it does make me want to jump in and yell, but I don't want to run again. I just want to yell a bit. I guess I just did that. Thank you for providing me this opportunity.
Well, after the election, you'll be an elder statesman, and you'll have to sort of puff and make it all sound all
I've learned
nice.
very hard to be less puffy.
You succeeded.
I did succeed. Thank you. I'm actually mayor till November 30th at midnight. I seem to need to say that nowadays because people seem to think it's Saturday at 8:15 p.m. when the results come in, or sorry, Monday. It's actually November 30th at midnight. The next mayor won't be sworn in until the next day at around 10 a.m. And if there's a large disaster between midnight and 10 a.m., I'm calling him.
But in the meantime, your own phone's going to stop ringing. How are you going to handle that?
It'll be interesting. It's it's a privilege being the mayor, and one of the privileges is people are very welcoming. They want you in their neighborhood. They want you to see the amazing things they're doing. We were just, Michael Booth's my arts and cultural advisor, amongst other hats, and we were just in Etobicoke today at Etobicoke Arts. And they've done this amazing mural project with a little laneway that is no wider than the distance between you and me. And Dion Brandt did a poem with Amnesty International about Article 13 of the Human Rights Convention. You go on this laneway in Etobicoke, people have a stereotype that Etobicoke is somehow different than the rest of Toronto. It's not. And you go on this laneway, and there's this wonderful poem painted on the wall. And I get the privilege of seeing things like that all over the city all the time. And as a result, I know a lot of people know me. Even when I travel, people will tap me on the shoulder. And in fact, last time I was traveling, a guy tapped me on the shoulder, and it was in a pub, and he'd been there for somewhat longer than I had. And he said, "Nobody believes me, but I've told them, you're Mel Lastman, aren't you?" And I said, "You're partly right." That's true, by the way. I'm not...
Where was that? What country were we in then?
The United Kingdom.
I see. Okay. Getting back to your defense of your mayoralty, I would think...
Oh, we haven't got to that yet, have we?
Well, I would agree. People seem not to be paying attention to the things that happen, the garbage crisis, which doesn't exist anymore, and all these things that you seem to have found solutions for, or partial solutions for, like homelessness, that somehow are not even mentioned in the current campaign. Yet there is this blowback, and so what is it? Why is it? I mean, people aren't telling me what it is that they're angry about. You must know.
Well, I do have the advantage of people speaking to me all over the city, as I said a minute ago. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people disagree, and I think, when I got elected, there were actually some people who didn't vote for me. Mm-hmm. And I know, much to my surprise, when I first ran for council, I couldn't believe that I didn't get 100% of the vote. Mm-hmm. It really astonished me. And
should have been in Etobicoke.
Or North York.
Yeah.
John and I were kidding about something beforehand. You can ask him after.
I know the libel laws.
Through experience. What was I talking about?
What were we talking about?
So, my theory on this is that there were people who didn't vote for me because they didn't share the vision that I shared, which nearly 300,000 people voted for in 2003, and considerably more in 2006 when I got 60% of the vote. They wanted investments in their city. They understood that amalgamation and downloading had caused huge structural fiscal problems for Toronto, and I ran openly on a platform saying, I'll be careful, but I'm going to raise taxes, I'm going to lobby the other governments for investments, and we're going to use the City of Toronto Act to bring in new revenues. I was very clear about that. And it's an unusual strategy. Most political advisors say, don't tell people you're going to raise taxes. Tell them you're going to freeze them, and then when you get elected, say, oh, I have no choice, it's the other guy's fault. I didn't do that. I was honest and direct, and I got 60% of the vote. But there were 30% of the people who really didn't like that. And they were afraid that I would do what I said I was. And I did. We have invested in this city significantly. We've helped address the city's structural financial problems, sometimes by taking tough measures like the land transfer tax. And it's resulted in a city government that is far more fiscally sustainable and far more able to make the investments that people need. But the people who didn't like it really don't like it. Because not only did they think that would happen, it did happen, and that's Councillor Ford, the base he's appealing to. Now, he does it with colorful language that's generally cites facts that are made up and totally false, but that's who he's appealing to. But the other hand, most Torontonians actually believe in the kind of city I'm talking about. And you look at all the polls. Why are we talking so much about polls? I'm out and I speak to more people every day than any pollster. Right? And what people tell me all the time, well, the first thing they say is things like, don't leave us, which is quite nice. I quite like that. I feel a bit bad saying I am, but I mean, I'm not going very far. And they'll talk about investments that they want to see in their neighborhood or their community, and that's the majority of Torontonians. That's the truth. And, which is why I've found the campaign very odd, because both of the candidates who the polls suggest are a little bit ahead of the better candidate, are trying to appeal to that one group. They're not trying to appeal to the Torontonians who want to build a city. And you'd have to ask them why. I don't understand it. I find it really baffling, frankly, and yes.
Okay.